Ethan Monroe was the boy every parent admired. Mia Carter was the girl everyone adored until their names became forever linked by a nightmare. Buried beneath the floor of a quiet suburban home, Ethan Monroe was the kind of teenager most parents dreamed of. At 17, he was mature, intelligent, and respectful. He never got into trouble at school, never argued with teachers, and never missed a curfew. He helped carry groceries without being asked, and made a habit of checking in on elderly neighbors. His mother, Karen Monroe, often said he was her greatest blessing. Since her husband died in a car accident 5 years earlier, it had been just the two of them. Life wasn't easy, but Ethan made it bearable. In a town like Brookside, small, friendly, and predictable, there was comfort in having a son like him. He stayed away from parties and spent most of his time at home. On weekends, while others his age were hanging out at the mall or getting into trouble, Ethan could be found in the basement, working on what he described as science experiments or model building projects. Karen never pried. She was grateful that her son wasn't out drinking or sneaking around with girls. If he wanted a little privacy, he had more than earned it. His teachers adored him. He wrote essays that read like college-level work, and his science fair projects always won awards. One teacher called him a once-in-a-generation mind. He volunteered at the town library and helped organize community events. Adults found him charming and articulate, while kids his age considered him a little strange, but harmless. He didn't seem to mind being alone. If anything, he preferred it. Neighbors often said Ethan seemed like an old soul. He dressed neatly, kept his room spotless, and had a habit of observing people more than talking to them. He watched, listened, and remembered small details, like who was allergic to what, or which neighbor always left for work exactly at 7:30 a.m. It seemed like a sign of thoughtfulness, of being exceptionally attentive. But later, those same traits would be seen in a much darker light. Karen worked long shifts at the local hospital, sometimes overnight. She trusted Ethan to look after the house while she was gone. Occasionally, she would notice unusual things: a chair slightly out of place, a tool missing from the shed, or the sound of footsteps when she came home early, but she brushed them off. She figured her son was just experimenting, maybe building something downstairs. He always had a logical explanation, and he always looked her in the eye. There were no arguments, no warning signs, no red flags. If anything, Ethan's only flaw was how perfect he seemed. No teenage mood swings, no defiance, no rebellion. He followed the rules to the letter. Looking back, that should have raised more questions. But in a town like Brookside, people didn't expect horror to live next door. Certainly not inside the home of a nurse and her golden boy son. The truth was quietly growing in the dark, beneath their feet, hidden, waiting, and building towards something no one would see coming. The first girl to go missing was Mia Carter. She was 16, popular at school, and known for her bubbly personality. She disappeared one evening after leaving a friend's house just 4 blocks from her own. Her parents reported her missing within hours. Police conducted search parties, canvassed neighborhoods, and even brought in scent dogs, but they found nothing. No witnesses, no signs of a struggle, and no clues. Mia had simply vanished. Her disappearance rattled the community, but some believed she had run away. It wasn't unheard of teenagers sometimes left without warning, only to return days later. 2 months later, Lila Jennings disappeared under eerily similar circumstances. She was 17, a quiet girl who kept to herself. She was last seen walking home from her part-time job at the ice cream parlor. This time, people paid closer attention. Lila was not the type to run away. She lived a structured life, never missed a shift, and had no issues at home. Her disappearance caused genuine alarm. Parents began setting strict curfews. Some wouldn't let their daughters walk alone, even in daylight. Still, there were no answers. The third girl, Zoe Crane, went missing 4 months later. The others, she vanished while walking alone. She was 16 and known for her rebellious streak, which caused authorities to initially label her a runaway. But her family insisted she had changed. She had recently re-enrolled in school, was attending therapy, and had started repairing relationships. As with the previous cases, there were no signs of where she went or what happened. Her phone had been shut off, and none of her social media accounts showed any activity. It was as if she had been erased. By now, people were panicking. 3 teenage girls from nearby towns, gone without a trace. Rumors spread quickly. Some believed there was a predator targeting girls who walked alone. Others suspected human trafficking. A few wild theories floated around, including talk of a cult or secret group operating in the area. Police increased patrols and held town meetings, but the fear continued to grow. The lack of evidence made things worse. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, no footage. Each girl had disappeared into thin air. The disappearances didn't seem connected by the usual patterns. The girls came from different backgrounds and had different personalities. They didn't attend the same schools and had never been seen together. Yet the timeline was too precise, the method too clean, for it to be coincidence. Someone had to be planning this, someone methodical, smart, and careful. Despite growing pressure from the public and media, authorities had no leads. The case became cold almost as soon as it began. And all the while, Ethan Monroe continued living his quiet life in Brookside. He went to school, walked his dog, and smiled at neighbors. He showed no signs of stress or distraction. While others speculated and feared the worst, he appeared untouched by the tragedies surrounding him. No one suspected that the person they were all searching for had been living among them the entire time. It was a rainy Saturday morning when Karen Monroe decided to dig through the basement. She had been meaning to take down the last of the winter decorations and bring up boxes of old family photos. Ethan was out walking the dog, and the house was quiet. The basement wasn't a place she visited often. Ed turned it into his personal workshop, as she respected his space. Still, she didn't see any harm in going down just for a few minutes. The air shifted the moment she stepped off the final stair. It was damp and heavy, filled with a metallic odor she couldn't quite place. She assumed it was just water damage or rust after all. The basement was old and not well ventilated. She walked past shelves of labeled boxes, old tools, and what looked like parts of school projects. Everything was neatly arranged, just like Ethan liked it. But when she moved a large plastic container to get to a crate of decorations, something caught her attention. The rectangular section of the floor didn't match the rest. It was a different shade of concrete, rougher and poorly patched with a thin sheet of plywood. Karen frowned. She didn't remember any repairs being done. Curious, she bent down and tapped on it. The wood sounded hollow. A sense of unease crawled up her spine, but she tried to push it aside. It was probably just a storage hatch or something Ethan built for his experiments. Still, something urged her to lift the panel. The plywood groaned as she pulled it up. Beneath was a dark, narrow space, no more than 3 feet deep. It was lined with clear plastic sheets that clung to the dirt walls and floor. At first, everything seemed empty, but as her eyes adjusted, she spotted something lying just out of reach, a tangle of fabric. Karen reached down with a broom handle and pulled it toward her. It was a girl's sneaker, pink with white laces. The sole was worn down, the side stained with something dark. Panic hit her all at once. She backed away, heart pounding, and ran upstairs to call the police. When officers arrived, they sealed off the house and began a full search. What they found under that crawlspace turned Brookside into a town gripped by terror. Wrapped in layers of plastic and hidden beneath thin blankets were the remains of 3 girls. Each body was placed carefully, side by side, as if on display. Forensic teams worked through the night. They confirmed the identities: Mia Carter, Leela Jennings, and Zoe Crane. The missing girls everyone had been searching for were here, beneath the floor of a boy no one suspected. Karen was in shock. She kept repeating the same phrase to investigators. He's just a kid, but the evidence said otherwise. This wasn't the work of someone careless or impulsive. It was organized, controlled, planned. And it had all been happening right under her roof, in the house she thought was safe. Detectives spent days combing through every inch of the Monroe house, collecting samples, taking photographs, and trying to make sense of what they had found. The crawlspace wasn't an afterthought. It had been deliberately constructed. The walls were reinforced with wood panels to keep the dirt from collapsing. The plastic lining wasn't just for concealment. It was there to contain fluids and prevent decay odors from escaping. A battery-powered fan had even been installed to direct airflow toward a broken heating duct, disguising the scent with the usual mustiness of the old house. What unsettled investigators most wasn't just the discovery of the 3 girls, it was the precision of it all. Everything had been methodical. Labels were taped to each plastic wrap bundle, initials, dates, and brief coded notes. There was no attempt to dispose of the bodies, no sign of panic or remorse. This wasn't a crime of desperation, it was a project. In Ethan's bedroom upstairs, police found a black leather notebook tucked beneath a loose floorboard. Inside were pages of handwritten entries, clinical, cold, and deeply disturbing. He had chronicled the abductions in alarming detail. From what time each girl was taken to how long they were held, what they ate, and how they behaved. The writing didn't read like confessions. It read like observations from a scientist studying specimens. He never used their names. They were labeled Subject 1, Subject 2, and Subject 3. Each victim had been kept alive for several days before being killed. There were no signs of sexual assault, no clear motive that made sense. The girls hadn't been tortured, but they had been restrained and monitored. The journal entries were calm, almost detached, filled with charts and references to behavioral thresholds and adaptation phases. To Ethan, this had not been about rage or revenge, it was something else entirely. One drawing in the notebook stood out, a rough sketch of the Crawlspace layout with 4 rectangles, not 3. The first 3 were labeled and crossed out, 4th was marked with a question mark. Below it, a name was scribbled in small, precise handwriting, a name that had not appeared in any missing persons report. Investigators immediately dug deeper. Behind a false wall in the far corner of the basement, they found a hidden chamber. It was no bigger than a walk-in closet, soundproofed with insulation and foam panels. Inside, a single mattress lay on the floor, stained and worn. Rusted chains were bolted into the concrete. There was a bucket, a flashlight, and a food tray with remnants of spoiled fruit. But the room was empty. Whoever had been there was gone. This discovery shifted everything. Either someone had escaped recently, or Ethan had moved them. Search dogs picked up faint traces, but the trail ended in the backyard near the back fence. Police believed he had used an old storm drain exit, something mapped in a childhood drawing found among his things. Ethan Monroe had vanished, and with him, the mystery of the missing 4th subject deepened. What terrified authorities now was no longer what he had done, but what he might still be planning. The manhunt for Ethan Monroe was immediate and intense. Within hours of discovering the hidden chamber in the basement, law enforcement issued an all-points bulletin. His face was broadcast on every major news network, his school photos shown alongside chilling headlines. Police swarmed the area around Brookside and extended the search across state lines. Roadblocks were set up, tips flooded the hotline, and helicopters scanned miles of dense forest surrounding the town. But Ethan had disappeared without a trace. Investigators searched his laptop and phone, hoping to find evidence of communication or plans, but both had been wiped clean. Only files recovered were encrypted and could not be accessed. Surveillance footage from nearby gas stations and traffic cameras showed no sign of him leaving. He hadn't used his bank account. His phone signal had gone dead hours before the discovery. And none of his fingerprints were found on the basement's false wall, indicating he had planned his exit with extreme care. Then, 2 weeks later, a hiker in a remote nature reserve, nearly 40 miles from Brookside, stumbled upon a strange scene. Deep in the woods, partially hidden beneath branches and rocks, was a torn backpack. Inside were Ethan's ID wallet, a blood-stained hunting knife, and a journal with several pages ripped out. 100 yards away, police found a shallow grave, recently dug but empty. The surrounding area was carefully swept, and while there were traces of blood in the soil, no body was ever recovered. The discovery sparked debate. Had Ethan taken his own life and staged the scene? Did he try to fake his death to escape the investigation? Or was someone else involved? Someone who had helped him disappear? None of the questions had answers. A forensic examination of the knife revealed Ethan's blood, but not enough to suggest a fatal wound. The grave showed signs of being disturbed after it was dug. Authorities theorized that it may have been a decoy, part of a larger plan. The most haunting question remained: what happened to the 4th subject? Despite releasing the name found in Ethan's notebook and following every possible lead, police found no evidence of the girl's existence. There was no school record, no medical history, no family reports of a missing person under that name. Some speculated she had escaped and gone into hiding, too traumatized to come forward. Others feared she had been taken somewhere far worse. As weeks turned into months, public interest in the case faded, but The fear never fully left Brookside. Parents still locked their doors earlier, watched their children more closely, and walked a little faster when the sun began to set. Every once in a while, someone would report a sighting of a teenage boy matching Ethan's description in a distant town or quiet back road. But none of the tips ever led anywhere. Ethan Monroe had vanished, leaving behind a town haunted by his secrets. The truth buried beneath the floor of a quiet suburban home had changed everything. And somewhere out there, the possibility remained he wasn't finished yet.